Jesse Caulfield heard the screams from 30 feet below, echoing up from the Devil's Hole like prayers from hell itself. The abandoned copper mine gaped before him, its edges worn smooth by the hands of men who'd thrown things down there they never wanted to see again. Today, those things were screaming. Jesse's mangled left hand throbbed as he gripped the rope, lowering himself into darkness while every instinct screamed at him to run. At the bottom, chained to the stone wall like an animal, sat a woman so massive she made the pit look like a child's trap. 7 feet of starved Apache fury, they told him in town, left to die for killing the rancher's boy. But when their eyes met, Jesse saw something else entirely. He saw himself after the war, broken and caged by grief. And when his ruined hand failed him on the rope, when he fell towards certain death, she caught him, lifted him with one arm like he weighed nothing at all, and set him gently on the ground beside her. Before we dive into the story, I want you to imagine being trapped somewhere so dark that you forget what sunlight feels like, where every person who passes by sees you as a monster. This story will challenge everything you believe about strength, about who deserves mercy, and about what makes someone human. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss tomorrow's incredible stories of redemption and unexpected love. And please, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing that we're all connected across the world, sharing these powerful moments together. Now let's continue with the story. The woman's chains rattled as she shifted back against the wall. Jesse's breathing came hard, not from fear but from recognition. He knew that look in her eyes, had seen it in every mirror since Shiloh. "They say you're a demon," he said. She studied him with dark eyes that held too much intelligence for the monster the town described. Her lips cracked from thirst, moved carefully around English words. "They say many things." Jesse pulled out his canteen. The water disappeared down her throat in desperate gulps. "Why did you save me?" He had to know. "You came down. No one comes down." The afternoon sun carved the pit's edge into a perfect circle of light, unreachable as redemption. Jesse recognized the convenience of blaming her, the same way his regiment had blamed Cherokee scouts for supplies that officers stole. "The boy you supposedly killed," Jesse started, "never touched him." She shifted, and he saw the festering wound in her shoulder, black around the edges where infection had taken hold. "What's your name?" "Ayanna. It means eternal bloom." "Jesse, it means gift." Something shifted in her face then, the first crack in armor built from months of dehumanization. "I'm coming back," he said. "Don't." But her eyes betrayed hope she couldn't afford. "I buried my wife 2 years ago. Haven't done a single useful thing since." "Maybe saving you is the first." Jesse learned the truth that night in Copper Creek's only saloon, where whiskey loosened tongues and guilt. The Apache woman had been captured during what folks called the Skeleton Ridge Massacre, though massacre implied a fight. 23 Apache dead, including children. The woman they'd thrown in the pit had been found singing over a small body, her daughter, they figured, though nobody asked. Judge Samuel Brennan himself had overseen her imprisonment, claiming she'd confessed to killing the Hartley boy. But old Pete, drunk on his 3rd bottle, whispered what others wouldn't. Nobody had seen her near the Hartley ranch. The boy's body was found 2 days after they'd already chained her in the pit. Jesse waited until the town slept before returning to the Devil's Hole. The rope burned against his ribs where he'd hidden it under his coat. This time, he brought a lantern. The light revealed what darkness had hidden. Ayanna's dress, once beautifully beaded, hung in tatters. Her shoulder wound wept yellow fluid that stained the rock behind her. But worst were the marks on the walls. Scratches where she'd tried to climb before the chain stopped her. Hundreds of them, each one a day of trying to escape. "You came back?" she said, surprised she couldn't hide. "Said I would." He unpacked medical supplies while she watched with those intelligent eyes. When he approached with whiskey to clean her wound, she didn't flinch. The bullet was still in there, poisoning her slowly. "Tell me about your daughter," he said, trying to distract her from the pain. Ayanna's face softened. "Morning Star. She was 6 winters. Loved to dance." Jesse's hand stilled. Sarah had been teaching their unborn child songs too, hymns she'd hummed while hanging laundry. Judge Brennan sells our scalps to the Mexicans. $100 for a warrior, $50 for a woman, $25 for a child. Morning Star was worth $25 dead. The whiskey bottle shook in Jesse's grip. There's a doctor in town, Jesse said. Catherine Morse, she might help. Why do you care what happens to me? Jesse secured a fresh bandage. My wife died while I was at war. Confederate raiders burned our farm. Her inside it. She was 8 months pregnant. I know what it's like to lose everything and keep breathing anyway. Not a stranger anymore, Ayanna said softly. There's something else, Ayanna said as he packed the supplies. The boy's killer. I saw him leaving the ranch that night. Thomas Creed, Brennan's enforcer. The boy caught him stealing from his father's safe. Jesse knew Creed, a war profiteer who'd gotten rich selling Confederate supplies to both sides. I'll talk to the doctor tomorrow, Jesse promised. As he climbed out, Ayanna called up. Jesse, my people believe crows carry messages to the spirit world. If I die here, tell the crows my daughter's name, so she knows I'm coming. Dr. Catherine Morse didn't look up from her medical journal when Jesse entered her clinic. If you're here about that Apache woman in the pit, the answer is yes. Jesse stopped cold. How did you bought enough carbolic acid and bandages to treat a cavalry unit. Since you arrived in town alone, logic suggests an interesting patient. She finally raised her eyes, sharp as her scalpels. Besides, I've been waiting for someone with enough conscience to help her. Catherine stood, barely reaching Jesse's shoulder, but her presence filled the room. She'd been watching the pit for months, she explained, calculating how to help without ending up down there herself. Brennan already considers me a troublemaker, she said, packing her medical bag. One more transgression, and I'll be run out of town, or worse. Then why risk it? Because I took an oath. First, do no harm. That includes harm by inaction. They devised a pulley system using mining equipment Jesse borrowed from abandoned claims. Under cover of darkness, they lowered Catherine into the pit while Jesse kept watch. The doctor worked by lantern light, examining Ayanna's wound. You know battlefield medicine, Ayanna observed, watching Catherine's techniques. Learned during the war. Worked in a Union hospital, though I treated both sides. Catherine prepared her instruments. Pain is pain, regardless of uniform. I was a healer, too, Ayanna said quietly. In my band. Set bones. Delivered babies. Knew which plants stopped bleeding. Catherine paused, interest sparking. Show me. Even chained, Ayanna demonstrated pressure points, described herb preparations. Two healers, recognizing each other across impossible divides. This will hurt, Catherine warned, preparing to extract the bullet. Payne and I are old friends, Ayanna replied. As Catherine worked, Ayanna spoke to distract herself. The real killer, Creed, he takes trophies. The Hartley boy wore his grandmother's ring, silver with a blue stone. Creed will have it. You're certain? Catherine asked, finally gripping the bullet with her forceps. I noticed details. It's why I survived so long. Ayanna gasped as the bullet came free. That ring is proof. Catherine cleaned and sutured the wound with silk thread. Jesse, lower the morphine, she called up. No, Ayanna said firmly. No clouded mind. I need to stay alert. The pain will be unbearable. I've buried my child. There's no greater pain than that. As Catherine packed her supplies, she made a decision. There's a hidden room in my clinic, behind the medicine cabinet. If you can get her out, bring her there. Jesse pulled Catherine up. 3 people now bound by sedition. The flash floods will start soon, Catherine said. These arroyos fill in minutes. She'll drown if she's still down there. The chains, Jesse said. They're iron, thick as my wrist, Ayanna spoke from below. Then you'll have to trust my strength. Water rises, I'll break them myself. You'll tear your arms off trying, Catherine protested. Better than drowning like a rat. The storm hit Copper Creek like God's own fist, turning dust streets into rivers within minutes. Jesse fought through the downpour toward the Devil's Hole, carrying bolt cutters stolen from the railway depot. Lightning illuminated the desert in snapshot moments, each flash showing water racing through the arroyos toward the pit. He had minutes, maybe less. The hole was already filling when he reached it. Ayanna stood waist deep in churning water. Her chains pulled taut as she strained against them. The rain had washed the dust from her face, and in the lightning's glare, Jessie saw her true strength, muscles cording like bridge cables under her skin. The tools? Jessie shouted over thunder, lowering the bolt cutters on a rope. The water was chest high on her now. She grabbed the cutters, positioned them on the chain, and squeezed. The handles bent like candy in her grip, useless. The water kept rising. "Get out!" Ayanna yelled up. "You can't save me!" Jessie threw himself flat at the pit's edge, reaching down with his good hand. "Then we'll do this different. Pull yourself up. Break the chains from the wall." She looked at the iron bolts securing her chains to stone, then at the water reaching her shoulders. Understanding flashed across her face. She wrapped the chains around her forearms, braced her feet against the wall, and pulled. The first bolt held. Water touched her chin. She adjusted her grip, and Jessie saw her make a decision. She was going to dislocate her own shoulders to get better leverage. "Wait! Use the water! Let it lift you!" Ayanna understood immediately. She took a massive breath as the water covered her head, then used her natural buoyancy combined with her strength. The physics changed everything. Underwater, pulling at a different angle, she became something elemental. The bolts screamed against stone. Jessie counted seconds. 30. 40. His chest burned in sympathy. Then an explosion of water as Ayanna burst from the surface, chains dangling free from her wrists, bolts still attached to their ends. She'd pulled them straight from the wall. She grabbed the rope Jessie had lowered, and he thought his good hand might tear off from the strain. But she wasn't pulling herself up. She was climbing, using the rope for guidance while her feet found purchase on the slick walls. In seconds, she erupted from the pit. They ran through the storm, Ayanna's long strides forcing Jessie to sprint. The abandoned mission of San Rafael appeared through rain like a fever dream. They crashed through into darkness. Ayanna fell to her knees, and that's when Jessie saw the damage. Her wrists were shredded where the chains had cut during her escape. Bone showed through in places. "Let me," Ayanna said, taking the bandages with steady hands and wrapping her own wounds. "Learned young. Apache children know healing before they know hunting." Jessie found a hidden cellar behind the altar, dry and defensible. They found old blankets, candles, even some preserved food in clay jars. Judge Samuel Brennan stood at the edge of the Devil's Hole, staring at the broken chains in the morning light. The storm had washed away tracks, but rage required no evidence. His enforcer, Thomas Creed, spat tobacco juice into the flooded pit. Apache Witch probably drowned, got washed into the arroyos, Creed suggested. "Nobody means she's alive." Brennan turned to the crowd gathering behind them. $1,000 to whoever brings her back, dead or alive. The money drew Willem Harrow like blood draws sharks. He rode into town that afternoon with 5 men, each wearing Apache scalps on their belts, like trophies. Harrow himself decorated his saddle with them, dozens of black threads of hair dancing in the wind. They called him the Collector, and he'd never failed to claim a bounty. In the mission cellar, Jessie's fever raged for 2 days. Ayanna never left his side, using traditional medicine techniques Catherine had reinforced. She made poultices from desert plants growing through the mission walls, forced bitter tea between his lips, sang healing songs her grandmother had taught her. Jessie drifted between consciousness and memory. Sometimes he called out for Sarah, sometimes for men who died at Antietam. Once, he grabbed Ayanna's hand and begged her not to let him die alone. "You won't," she promised. "Neither of us will." On the 3rd night, Jessie's fever broke. He woke to find Ayanna asleep sitting up, still holding his hand. Her own wounds were healing badly without proper treatment. Infection setting in despite her self-care. She'd been ignoring her own pain to tend his. "You should have left," he whispered. She opened her eyes. "Apache don't abandon family." "We're not family." "Aren't we? You risked everything for me. I carried you here. We've bled for each other." "My people have a word, ND. It means the people. But really, it means anyone who proves themselves worthy of belonging. You're ND now." A. Horse whinnied outside. They both froze. Footsteps on the mission floor above. Multiple sets, careful and searching. Harrow's men. The altar, someone said above. Check behind it. Ayanna stood, her full height making the cellar feel tiny. She positioned herself between Jesse and the ladder. If they were found, she'd fight. Jesse struggled to stand, his pistol somehow steady in his good hand despite his weakness. The footsteps stopped directly overhead. Dust drifted down through boards. Jesse could hear breathing, smell tobacco smoke. His finger found the trigger. Then a shout from outside. "Tracks! Leading south toward Mexico!" The footsteps retreated, voices fading. False tracks, Jesse realized. Someone had laid a false trail. But who? They waited an hour before investigating. Near the mission's southern wall, Jesse found boot prints in mud, deliberately deep and clear, leading away. But one print had a distinctive worn heel he recognized. Dr. Catherine Morse had been here, risking her life to misdirect the hunters. Dr. Catherine Morse had been watching Thomas Creed for 3 days, learning his habits like symptoms of a disease. He drank at the saloon until midnight, visited Ruby's establishment until 2, then stumbled home to his room above the hardware store. Tonight, she'd seen him polishing something silver, something that caught lamplight like a beacon of guilt. Catherine slipped through shadows, medical bag in hand as always. No one questioned a doctor making night calls. But under her instruments lay something else. Letters she'd found in Brennan's trash, evidence of land deeds stolen from Apache territory, names of innocent people sold as scalps to Mexican authorities. Creed's door was locked, but Catherine had learned lockpicking from the same abolitionists who'd taught her to forge free papers. The room reeked of whiskey and violence. On his dresser, between scalps and coins, sat the Hartley boy's ring, blue stone gleaming like an accusation. She reached for it when boards creaked behind her. Creed stood in the doorway, very much not drunk, very much expecting her. "Brennan said you'd come sniffing around." His hand moved to his knife. "Shame. Town needs a doctor, but not one who helps Apache demons." Catherine's fingers found her scalpel. "That woman never touched the boy." "You did. Prove it." He lunged. Catherine moved with surgical precision, but Creed had killed before. His knife caught her shoulder, spinning her toward the window. Blood soaked her dress instantly. She slashed with the scalpel, catching his cheek, buying seconds. But seconds weren't enough. Creed grabbed her throat, lifting her off the ground. Black spots danced in her vision. This was how she'd die, she realized. Then the window exploded inward. Ayanna flowed through like a force of nature, 7 feet of contained fury. She'd been watching, Jesse learned later, protecting Catherine as repayment for the false trail that saved them. Creed dropped Catherine, reaching for his gun. Ayanna caught his wrist, and Jesse heard bones snap like kindling. Creed screamed, stumbling backward toward the door. Ayanna followed, inevitable as sunrise. "You killed children," she said quietly. "My daughter's friends. Baby's still nursing." Creed pulled another knife with his left hand, slashed wildly. Ayanna let it cut her, didn't even flinch, just kept advancing. Creed backed onto the balcony, panic replacing cruelty in his eyes. "Help me!" he screamed to the empty street. "The Apache demon's here!" Ayanna grabbed him by the throat, lifted him as easily as he'd lifted Catherine. "I am not a demon. I am a mother who lost everything. You are just a man who took it." The balcony railing groaned under their combined weight. Wood splintered. They fell together into darkness. Jesse reached them first. Creed lay twisted at impossible angles, neck broken. Ayanna knelt beside him, blood spreading from where his knife had found her ribs. But she wasn't looking at Creed. She was cradling Catherine, who'd crawled to the window and fallen trying to help. Sheriff Martinez gave them 3 days. 3 days to bury Catherine properly and prepare for trial. But everyone knew Brennan wouldn't wait for justice to follow its course. By dawn, Jesse and Ayanna were riding north toward the Dragoon Mountains, Naish guiding them through paths hidden from white eyes for generations. The old scout hadn't spoken much beyond his testimony in town. Now, as they climbed toward sacred Apache ground, he finally explained. Been watching since the massacre. Saw them take you, Ayanna. Saw them blame you for their crimes. Too old and too alone to fight then, but not too old to witness. The burial ground spread across a hidden valley, marked by stones, arranged in patterns only Apache understood. Ayanna walked among them like returning home after a long war. Her movements changed here, became more fluid, more herself. Here, she whispered, stopping at a small grave marked with river stones. Morning Star. A wooden doll lay weathered but intact among the rocks, the one Ayanna had been carving when the soldiers came. Jesse watched her kneel, massive frame folding into something small and broken. For the first time since he'd known her, she wept. Not silent tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from the earth itself. Jesse wanted to comfort her, but understood this needed to happen alone first. He moved to give her privacy, but she caught his hand. Stay. She should know the man who helped her mother live again. Jesse knelt beside her, his own tears finally coming. For Sarah, for their unborn child, for all the grief he'd swallowed like poison for 2 years. They cried together, two people who'd forgotten they were allowed to mourn. Naish built a fire as the sun set, began singing in Apache. Ayanna translated between verses. Songs about Morningstar's laugh, how she'd tried to befriend a rattlesnake once, convinced all creatures could be reasoned with. Tell me about Sarah, Ayanna said when the songs ended. Jesse had never talked about her to anyone since she died. But here, in this sacred place, words came. She sang while she cooked. Terrible voice, but so much joy in it. She'd read to me from books she'd memorized because we couldn't afford many. She was pregnant when I left for war. We'd painted the nursery yellow because she said it was the color of hope. What was the child's name to be? David for a boy, after my brother who died young. Hope for a girl, after what Sarah believed in most. Ayanna took his damaged hand, began manipulating the joints gently, testing flexibility. My grandmother could work with injuries like this. Not to fix completely, but to restore some use. May I try? Jesse nodded. Ayanna worked for an hour, using techniques passed through generations. It hurt, but differently than the constant ache he'd grown used to. This was pain, with purpose. There, she said finally. Try now. Jesse flexed his fingers. Not perfect, but 2 fingers that hadn't moved since Shiloh slowly responded. He could make a partial fist. Skeleton Canyon earned its name from the bones of those who died, defending or taking it. The narrow pass had seen Spanish conquistadors, Apache warriors, Mexican soldiers, and American settlers all bleed into its red sand. Now it would see Jesse and Ayanna's last stand. They'd almost made it to Fort Buchanan with their prisoners when Brennan's posse caught them. 30 men, all deputized, all legal, under papers the judge had signed himself. Naish had ridden ahead for help, but help was hours away. The canyon was their only choice, its high walls and narrow passages evening the odds. Release the Apache woman and walk away, Caulfield. Brennan's voice echoed off stone. This isn't your fight. Jesse laughed, bitter as alkali water. Been my fight since I pulled myself out of that pit, a changed man. They'd positioned themselves at the canyon's narrowest point. Ayanna had found an overhang that provided cover while commanding the approach. 30 men would have to come at them in single file. You know what's funny? Ayanna said, checking the rifle Naish had left them. I never wanted to be a warrior. I wanted to be a teacher, like the mission women who taught me English. Wanted Morningstar to have choices I never did. You're teaching now, Jesse replied. Teaching them we're not what they thought we were. The first wave came at sunrise. 5 men rushing the narrow passage, firing wild. Jesse's military training kicked in, controlled shots dropping 2 before they reached the first bend. Ayanna's rifle cracked once, and another fell. The survivors retreated. During the lull, Ayanna bandaged a graze on Jesse's arm. Her hands were gentle despite their size. If we die here, she started. We won't. But if we do, I want you to know something. These past days, I've felt human again. Not Apache, not woman, not survivor. Just human. You gave that back to me. The second attack came from two directions. While men charged the passage, others scaled the canyon walls. Ayanna saw them first, swinging the rifle up to fire at climbers while Jesse held the ground approach. But there were too many. A man appeared above them, rifle aimed at Jesse's back. Jesse turned, knowing he was too slow. Then Ayanna moved with impossible speed, grabbed Jesse like he weighed nothing, and threw him behind cover as the shot fired. The bullet meant for Jesse's heart caught Ayanna in the stomach instead. She grunted, stayed standing, and with one fluid motion threw a rock that knocked the shooter from his perch. "You're hit," Jesse said, seeing blood spread across her dress. "Had worse," she lied. But Jesse knew gut wounds, knew the clock that started ticking the moment lead met intestine. Brennan himself appeared at the passage entrance. "It's over, Caulfield. Surrender, and I'll make her death quick." "Like you made the Hartley boys?" "Death quick?" Jesse replied. Dust clouds appeared to the south, riders in uniform. Captain Sterling's cavalry unit brought by Naish. The courtroom in Copper Creek had never been so full. Every seat taken, people standing along walls, crowding windows. They'd come to see the Apache giant defend herself, but also to witness the fall of Judge Samuel Brennan, whose hand was still bandaged from Jesse's bullet. Captain Sterling had brought military authority and federal investigators who'd been tracking the scalp trade for years. Brennan sat at the defendant's table now, the hunter become hunted. His own ledgers, retrieved from Catherine's clinic, lay as evidence. Ayanna entered walking tall, despite her healing wounds. She wore a simple dress Catherine's sister Mary had sent from California, along with a letter promising sanctuary when this was over. The crowd whispered at her height, her dignity, the way she moved like water despite her size. "State your name for the record," the federal prosecutor said. "Ayanna of the Chiricahua Apache, mother of Morning Star, survivor of the Skeleton Ridge Massacre. Tell us about the night Timothy Hartley died." Ayanna's testimony was clear, precise, devastating. She described seeing Creed and Brennan at the ranch, the struggle, the boy's death, the careful staging after. She spoke in perfect English, destroying any pretense that she was the savage they'd imagined. "Why didn't you come forward then?" the prosecutor asked. "I was Apache. Who would believe me?" The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. Several people looked away, ashamed. Brennan's lawyer tried to discredit her. "You killed Thomas Creed." "You're a murderer yourself." "I defended Dr. Catherine Morse as he strangled her. I acted to save a life." "You broke free from chains that held you for months." "Such strength isn't natural, isn't human." Ayanna stood to her full height. "My strength comes from surviving what your client did to my people. Every Apache woman who watched her children murdered. Every mother who endured to remember their names. That strength is completely human." Jesse testified next, his military record lending weight to his words. When asked why he'd risked everything for an Apache woman, his answer silenced the room. "Because I saw myself in that pit. We put people in holes when we're afraid to see ourselves in them. I'd been in my own hole since my wife died." Ayanna showed me how to climb out. The jury deliberated for 1 hour, guilty on all counts. Brennan would hang, but more importantly, the scalp trade in the territory would be investigated, its participants prosecuted. As the crowd dispersed, Ruby pressed money into Ayanna's hand. For the journey to California, some of us always knew Brennan was evil. We were just too scared to say. The Hartley boy's mother approached Ayanna. "I'm sorry for what we did to you." Ayanna knelt, bringing herself to the woman's eye level. "You lost a child. That grief makes people do terrible things. I understand. How do you forgive?" "I don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can choose not to carry hate. It's too heavy, and I've carried enough." 6 months later, the ranch spread across 40 acres of California Valley, backed by mountains that turned purple at sunset. Jesse watched Ayanna work with a wild Mustang, her movements patient as water wearing down stone. The horse, which had thrown 3 men before they brought it to her, now followed her like a puppy. "She speaks their language," Mary Morse said, joining Jesse at the fence. She'd become more than their benefactor. she'd become family. Catherine wrote about that gift. Their ranch had become known throughout the county, not for scandal, though there'd been plenty when an Apache woman and a white man married in both traditions, but for the horses. Ayana's methods, learned from generations of Apache horsemen, created mounts that seemed to read their riders' minds. "Papa Jesse! Mama Ayana! Look what I can do!" Samuel, the 6-year-old Apache boy they'd adopted from the missionary school, stood on his pony's back as it walked in circles. His sister, 4-year-old Emma, a white girl orphaned by cholera, clapped from her own pony. "Careful, little warrior," Ayana called, but pride colored her warning. The children had arrived 2 months ago. Samuel had forgotten his Apache name but remembered his mother's face. Emma had been passed between reluctant relatives until Mary suggested the ranch. They'd taken to Ayana and Jesse like seeds to soil. "Tell us the story again," Emma demanded that evening. "About how you met." Jesse and Ayana exchanged glances. They'd crafted a version suitable for children, one that kept the truth while softening its edges. "I was trapped," Ayana began, "in a dark place, very scared and alone." "And Papa found you," Samuel continued, knowing every word. "He did. Even though his hand was hurt and everyone said not to, he climbed down to help me." "Because that's what good people do," Emma added seriously. Later, after the children slept, Jesse and Ayana sat on their porch watching stars. Inside, on the mantel, stood 2 photographs, Sarah holding wildflowers and Morningstar laughing. Beside them lay the wooden doll, waiting for when Emma was old enough to care for it properly. "Letter from Fort Buchanan," Jesse said. "Sterling says 3 more of Brennan's men have been convicted. Their nearest neighbor Miguel rode up the path." "Ayana, that horse you gentled for my grandson, it's perfect." "Boy's riding like he was born to it." "Payment's not necessary, Miguel." "Not payment. Invitation. My daughter's wedding next month. You'll all come, yes? As family?" "We'll be there," Ayana promised. "I love you," Jesse said after Miguel left, words he hadn't spoken since Sarah died. "And I love you," Ayana replied. "Before we close this chapter of their lives, I want to thank you for joining Jesse and Ayana on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please click the like button and subscribe. Tomorrow, I'll share another powerful story that will challenge what you think you know about love and courage.